The North Atlantic gnawed at the hull, a relentless beast with teeth of ice and a hunger that never slept. Each wave slammed against the steel, a guttural roar that vibrated through my bones and echoed the unease that clawed at my insides. The air itself was a weapon, a frigid blade that sliced through exposed skin and stole your breath before you knew it was gone. Above, the sky was a canvas of bruised purples and angry grays, mirroring the turmoil within me. I gripped the railing, the cold metal burning my gloved hand, and stared out at the endless, unforgiving horizon. Somewhere out there, beyond the churning whitecaps and the swirling snow, lay Murmansk. And somewhere within me, a fragile hope flickered, battling the growing dread that threatened to consume it. The ship groaned, a mournful sound that spoke of age and hardship, of countless voyages through these treacherous waters. It felt alive, this vessel, a steel leviathan battling the elements, and I, a small, insignificant part of its struggle. The smell of salt and diesel hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of our isolation, our vulnerability. We were a tiny island of warmth and light in a sea of darkness and cold, a fragile bubble against the crushing weight of the Arctic. I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the noise, the cold, the fear, but it was no use. They were all part of me now, woven into the fabric of my being. My breath plumed in front of me, a fleeting ghost in the biting air. I watched it dissipate, swallowed by the vastness, and wondered if that was what awaited us all. To be swallowed whole, to disappear without a trace, leaving only the cold, indifferent sea behind. A shiver ran down my spine, a primal fear that had nothing to do with the temperature. It was the fear of the unknown, the fear of the power of nature, the fear of what lay ahead. I opened my eyes again, determined to face it, to fight it, to survive. For what, I didn't know. But something inside me refused to surrender. Not yet. The photograph was worn, creased at the edges, the colors faded by time and handling. My grandmother clutched it to her chest, her knuckles white, her eyes filled with a sorrow that seemed to reach back across the years. "That's him," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the crackling fire. "Your grandfather. Taken just before he sailed." He was young, barely a man, with a confident grin and eyes that sparkled with mischief. He wore a naval uniform, crisp and new, and stood proudly in front of a ship, its name blurred in the background. He looked invincible, untouched by the horrors that awaited him. I traced the outline of his face with my finger, trying to imagine him as he was then, full of life and hope, unaware of the darkness that lay ahead. Grandma's stories were all I had of him. Tales of his bravery, his kindness, his love for the sea. She spoke of him as a hero, a legend, a man who had sacrificed everything for his country. But beneath the surface of her words, I sensed a deep, unyielding grief, a wound that time had never healed. She never talked about the convoy itself, the Arctic, the dangers he faced. It was as if those were forbidden words, locked away in the deepest recesses of her heart. I remember the day I found his letters. Hidden in a dusty trunk in the attic, tied together with faded ribbon. They were addressed to her, each one carefully written, filled with his love, his longing, his fears. He described the beauty of the northern lights, the camaraderie of his fellow sailors, the terror of the U-boats that stalked them beneath the waves. He wrote of the cold, the relentless cold that seeped into your bones and never left you. He wrote of the ice, the treacherous ice that could crush a ship like a toy. He wrote of the storms, the raging storms that tossed them about like leaves in the wind. As I read his words, I felt a connection to him, a bond that transcended time and space. I understood his fear, his courage, his love. I understood the sacrifices he had made. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep within my soul, that I had to follow in his footsteps. I had to see the Arctic for myself, to experience the challenges he had faced, to honor his memory. That was why I was here, on this ship, braving the same treacherous waters that had claimed him so many years ago. To find him. To find myself. To finally lay his ghost to rest. The storm hit like a vengeful god. One moment, the waves were merely monstrous, the next, they were vertical walls of black water, clawing at the hull of the HMS Defender. A rogue wave, larger than any we'd yet encountered, slammed into the ship's port side with the force of 1,000 cannons. I remember the sickening groan of metal, the shudder that ran through the entire vessel, the sudden, terrifying list to starboard. Panic erupted. Men scrambled for handholds, their faces pale in the flickering emergency lights. The deck tilted so violently that navigating it became an exercise in survival. I gripped a nearby stanchion, knuckles white, watching as unsecured equipment, crates, tools, even a stray life raft, slid across the deck and disappeared into the churning abyss. Then came the explosion. It wasn't a massive, earth-shattering blast, but a sharp, contained detonation from deep within the ship. The lights flickered again, then died completely, plunging us into absolute darkness punctuated only by the flashes of lightning outside. The air filled with the acrid smell of burning insulation. Someone screamed. Captain Davies' voice, strained but firm, cut through the chaos over the ship's intercom. "Damage control teams, report. All hands, prepare for possible evacuation." Evacuation? The word hung in the air, heavy with dread. Evacuation into this? Into the teeth of the Arctic storm? It was a death sentence. I fought my way towards the engine room, my heart pounding against my ribs. The explosion had come from that direction. As an engineering officer, I had to assess the damage, to try and salvage what I could. The passageways were flooded, the water icy and rising rapidly. I stumbled over debris, the darkness a disorienting blanket. Reaching the engine room door, I found it jammed shut. Smoke billowed from the cracks around the frame, thick and black. With a desperate heave, I managed to force the door open. The scene inside was a nightmare. Twisted metal, shattered gauges, and sparking wires littered the floor. 2 of my men were pinned beneath a collapsed section of the overhead, their faces contorted in pain. A third lay motionless nearby. The chief engineer, Miller, was struggling to extinguish a fire near a ruptured fuel line. "Get them out!" Miller shouted, his voice hoarse. "Get them out now! It's going to blow!" I didn't need to be told twice. The heat was intense, the air thick with fumes. I grabbed one of the trapped men, Wilson, and began to pull, ignoring the searing pain in my shoulder. He was heavier than I remembered, his limbs limp and unresponsive. Together, Miller and I managed to free him and drag him out of the engine room, the stench of burning oil clinging to our clothes. We went back for the other man, Harris, but it was too late. Another explosion ripped through the engine room, throwing us back into the flooded passageway. The world went white. The taste of salt still lingers, even now, decades later. I can taste it in the morning coffee, in the evening scotch. It's the taste of the Arctic, the taste of fear, the taste of loss. It coats my tongue, a constant reminder. I sit here, in my small cottage overlooking the Dorset coast, the salt air a pale imitation of that frozen hell. The waves crash against the shore, a rhythmic pulse that echoes the churning of my memories. The gray sky mirrors the perpetual gloom that resides within me. Sleep offers little respite. The dreams come, unbidden and relentless. I see Wilson's face, twisted in agony. I smell the burning oil. I hear Miller's shout, the desperate plea for survival. And then, the explosion. Always the explosion. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls and the rain lashes against the windows, I imagine I can hear the cries of the men we lost. Their voices carried on the wind, whispers of accusation, of longing, of regret. I try to block them out, but they persist, clinging to the edges of my consciousness. The silence is the worst. The crushing, suffocating silence that follows the storm. The silence of a ship adrift, of a mission failed, of lives extinguished. The silence of guilt. They gave me a medal, you know. For bravery. For service to my country. But what good is a medal when you can still feel the weight of the men you couldn't save? What good is honor when it's stained with the blood of your comrades? I try to find solace in the simple things. The warmth of the fire, the smell of freshly baked bread, the companionship of my old dog, Nelson. But even these small comforts are tinged with sadness. I see the ghost of Harris in Nelson's eyes, the echo of Miller's laughter and the crackling flames. The past is a relentless pursuer, always just a step behind. I am an old man now, weathered and worn by time and trauma. The Arctic wind has etched deep lines into my face, mirroring the scars that run deeper still. I carry the weight of that convoy with me, a burden I will bear until my dying day. And sometimes, in the quiet moments, I wonder if I truly deserve to survive. Block 5. The icy grip finally released. The storm, exhausted, retreated like a defeated beast, leaving behind a canvas of bruised purple and orange smeared across the Arctic sky. A fragile sun, a ghost of warmth, peeked through the dissipating clouds, painting the ravaged sea in fleeting hues of gold. The convoy, battered but unbroken, limped onward. The Perseus, her bow a mangled mess of twisted steel and ice, was a testament to the fury they had endured. Inside the bridge, Commander Davies stood silhouetted against the dawn, his face etched with weariness, his eyes reflecting the vast, indifferent ocean. He hadn't slept in what felt like an eternity, fueled only by adrenaline and the unwavering responsibility for the lives under his command. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, a gesture of profound fatigue. The radio crackled to life, a voice, thin, distorted, breaking through the static. It was the Hope, the last straggler, confirming they were still afloat, still fighting. A wave of relief, so potent it almost buckled his knees, washed over Davies. They had made it. Almost. They limped into Murmansk harbor days later, greeted not by fanfare, but by a grim-faced contingent of Soviet officers and the stark reality of war's relentless demands. The supplies were unloaded, desperately needed munitions and food for a nation locked in a brutal struggle. Davies watched, his heart heavy, as the precious cargo disappeared into the maw of the war machine. He knew where it was going, what it would be used for. He knew the cost. Later, standing on the deck of the Perseus, staring out at the gray, unforgiving waters, he found a small, folded piece of paper tucked into his pocket. It was a letter, addressed simply to the captain, written in shaky, unfamiliar handwriting. He opened it carefully. It was from Anya, the young woman he'd briefly met in Reykjavik, the one who had given him the small, carved wooden bird. Captain, it read, asterisk. My brother Dmitri is a soldier. He fights near Stalingrad. I pray every day for his safety, and for the safety of all your brave sailors. This little bird is a symbol of hope. May it guide you through the darkness and bring you safely home. Know that your sacrifice is not forgotten. We see you. We thank you. Asterisk Davies closed his eyes, the words searing themselves into his soul. The small wooden bird, worn smooth from his constant touch, felt warm in his palm. It was a fragile thing, a tiny beacon of humanity in a world consumed by darkness. He looked out at the harbor, at the faces of the Soviet dockworkers, their eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and desperation. He saw the ghost of Dmitri, fighting in the frozen hell of Stalingrad. He saw Anya, praying for a miracle. He understood then. This wasn't just about ships and supplies. It was about hope. It was about solidarity. It was about the unwavering belief that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, humanity could still prevail. The Arctic convoys were a lifeline, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. He held the wooden bird tight, a silent promise etched in his heart. He would carry their hope with him, through the ice and the storms, through the darkness and the despair. He would carry it home. The war was far from over, but in that moment, standing on the deck of the battered Perseus, under the watchful gaze of the Arctic sky, Commander Davies felt a flicker of something akin to peace. He had done his duty. He had faced the storm. He had delivered hope. And that, he knew, was enough. For now.